Normally I would open with some dialogue and footage of another game, maybe recommend a thing, maybe quote a thing, but this time we're doing something different. Get ready for the edgiest edgelord shit you've ever seen in your life. Shadow the Hedgehog, developed by Sonic Team USA in 2005, is a 3D platformer in the Sonic Adventure series, and whether you agree with that statement or not is irrelevant. The fact is that it's a direct sequel to Sonic Adventure 2 in plot, and therefore is a part of that series. Many of the team members have worked on notable titles like Phantasy Star 1 and 2, the Sonic Adventure games, the Golden Axe series, and even a little bit of Wizardry. Has anybody here played Wizardry? If you're younger than 30, probably not. I have some words to say about every game in the Sonic lineup, but I wanted to start here because this game is more than just a little bit controversial. If you know, you know, and if you don't, 3D Sonic games haven't always had the greatest treatment. There's a whole pile of actual garbage mixed in with the really good stuff. But I think what I have to say here might be a little surprising to everybody, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. I personally spent a lot of time playing this game as a kid, so I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm riding through a lot of this review on nostalgia. The story here is, well, it's actually a bunch of stories. 326 to be exact. I'll try to summarize the overall picture the best I can, but I can't guarantee it'll make sense. This game picks up right after Sonic Adventure 2. Shadow somehow survives getting absolutely decimated on the Ark and wakes up in the middle of the apocalypse with amnesia. Sound wild? Well, we're just getting started. Over the course of the game, Shadow will interact with various characters who provide him with goals that turn the tide of the plot in one direction or another. You can be a hero sometimes, a villain sometimes, or you can just say fuck it, I do it myself and ignore everything. No matter which pathway you pick, one thing starts to become clear very quickly. Shadow's constantly having flashbacks to a traumatic event, and all the dude really wants is to figure out where he is and what he is. Over a period of time, we learn that Shadow was manufactured in a laboratory aboard the Ark by Dr. Robotnik, specifically to be some kind of ultimate life form. Honestly, some of the plot points are edgy just for the sake of it, and others are genuinely really dark shit. The traumatic flashback Shadow keeps having is the memory of a soldier shooting his best friend Maria, and discovering that he's the ultimate life form just makes him feel much more alone when he's already struggling to remember who he is. Say whatever you want about the cartoon hedgehog with guns thing, or the repetitive use of the word damn, that doesn't really outshine the more outstanding plot points. There are plenty of reasons to hate the plot, like the awful dialogue, some of the extremely strange endings, but that still doesn't make the good parts any worse. Remember, 326 endings. That's a hell of a lot of plot, and it's understandable that it wasn't an easy thing to manage. In the way of gameplay, it's actually a lot better than I remember. Shadow moves around fast as fuck, and it can be a little floaty at times, but a little bit of patience goes a long way toward figuring out how this whole thing is supposed to work. Think of Banjo-Tooie for a second. There are a lot of moments where a Jiggy can only be collected by taking advantage of the analog stick's pressure sensitivity to sneak. This is that same idea. Shadow has a lot of moments where you can absolutely run at high speed, but because of the focus on collection and combat for missions, there's an equal focus on taking advantage of joystick pressure. It's not too hard to get the hang of, and it keeps me consciously thinking about my hands, so I'm a little more collected for the more unusual platforming segments. As far as traditional Sonic mechanics go, there are a lot of recognizable things here. Collecting rings prevents you from dying, and smacking into enemies and hazards or falling off a platform platforms will make you lose those rings. You can press the right face button to start up a spin dash, and if you're in front of a line of rings, you can dash along the ring line with the same button. There are also alien goo deposits that you can spin dash on to find alternate pathways. Going around a loop isn't nearly as difficult as it's made out to be, despite the weird camera swing. Just hitting the boost and holding forward perpetually will let you clear the loops without an issue, much like every other 3D Sonic game. The homing attack from Sonic Adventure makes an appearance here, and it works just as well as it does in those games, so I'll consider that a good thing. On to the unusual mechanics. We'll get the elephant out of the way: guns. This game has quite a few different guns available to use, and many of them behave in the way that you would expect. They shoot. Some of them are a little weirder, like the suction gun, and some of them are more hilarious, like the Robotnik Nerf guns. But there are also melee weapons available. There are swords, lances, trees, and you can pick up and throw many parts of levels like cars, crates, barrels, and other stuff. The gunplay works just fine, and that's great because there are plenty of missions that require you to kill all of an enemy type in that level. There are also vehicles, and honestly, that's probably the weakest part of the game overall. Vehicles have terrible durability, shitty handling, and it feels like whoever designed that mechanic never actually drove a car before making this game. Thankfully though, those are completely ignorable and optional, so they don't actually hurt anything. They just don't need to be there. The next mechanic is Chaos, split into two abilities. You can fill your red and blue Chaos gauge by defeating evil and good enemies respectively, and once filled you can execute one of two super abilities. First is Chaos Blast, which just annihilates everything nearby. Second is Chaos Control, which lets you zoom through the level at ridiculous speeds. Chaos Control is extremely broken, and can be abused to speed through pretty much the entire neutral route in a few minutes. Speaking of bugs, there are quite a few, but I'll take just a second to mention a couple that I noticed. First is that the homing attack doesn't always do damage, which is kind of a drag, but Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were the exact same way, so it's not too surprising. Next is that ring lines often only collect the first ring, and that's caused by just a tiny amount of angle on the approach. That's probably less a bug and more just unrefined code. A tiny bit of polish would have gone a long way. Another weird issue is boss character hitboxes. They feel both very easy to manipulate and very inconsistent. Truth be told, I was expecting everything to be a hell of a lot worse than it is. It isn't fantastic. I'm not the biggest fan of early 3D Sonic games, and it's very janky in places where a small amount of extra refinement would have been excellent. But overall, it's kind of mediocre. It isn't any other 3D Sonic game, but it is a decent one, just with too much shit going on. We found the definition of quantity over quality here. Visually, meh? It's very identical to Sonic Adventure 2. In some places that isn't a bad thing. There are a lot of levels with great color contrast and interesting background imagery, but in other places there are a lot of gray and dismal looking bits of shit. To its credit, it's all very dynamic. There's a lot of destruction, flashy effects, gunfire, NPCs, and none of it ever feels totally empty. The pre-rendered cutscenes are hella good, albeit a little bit cheesy, but a lot of the in-game visuals are low resolution and low polygon for what the GameCube and PS2 were capable of. It sort of feels like this game began its life on the Dreamcast, and when it was later moved on to something else, it was just too late to change the fidelity by any meaningful amount. So not bad, but not amazing either. Just meh. Finally, the music is great. That's something that Sonic games almost always do very well. The theme is high octane, and Crush 40 coming back from the Sonic Adventure games was an excellent decision. That Edgelord opening video that I let play out is actually a guilty pleasure of mine. I love that song, and it fits in really good with the angsty mood. It isn't too serious, it isn't too dark, and it still sounds like the same Crush 40 that just a few years prior was telling us all to follow their rainbow. The stage music is all pretty good too. Nothing insanely memorable, but thematically fitting for each map. In the way of sound design that isn't music, I have to make the common joke and talk about how amazingly bad it is to hear Shadow say damn every time he falls or dies. They were really reaching for that E10 rating when they didn't even really have to. I'm pretty sure all of the guns would have accomplished that anyway. With all of that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Shadow the Hedgehog a rating of 6 out of 10. It isn't great, and there are plenty of people out there who absolutely hate this game, but this is a Pro Skater 5 issue to me. Just like I Am All of Me is a guilty pleasure song, so too is this game a guilty pleasure of mine. Nostalgia plays a big part in that, but there's another good reason for me to think this way. I've played almost every Sonic game to release. The original Sonic was the first game I ever played, and I've seen my way around some of the best and the worst. In a world where games like Sonic R, Sonic 06, Black Knight and Secret Rings, Sonic RPG, and multiple Sonic Sonic Boom titles exist, this actually isn't that bad. It's completely playable. It isn't broken beyond belief, and it isn't hard to control or understand. The biggest downfall for the whole thing is the dialogue and whatever passes for a story in this clusterfuck. I said at the beginning of the gameplay that it was quantity over quality, and that really is true. But it's really a shock how playable this game is considering that. I've played some actual garbage around here, and I mean shit that makes me look back in disgust at the fact that I spent time with them. This isn't really one of those games. It's just alright, and I think that's both a drawback and an advantage. In the greater scope of video games, it's just mid. It makes sense this way. It could be, and has been, a hell of a lot worse. I think I'm comfortable with a 6. Now that I'm done with all of that, I already mentioned in the last video that the next game will be Jet Set Radio, or Jet Grind Radio, depending on how big of a difference there is. I don't really know what's after that, but we're not hurting for suggestions around here. You guys still suggest new games, and I've still got 2 huge lists of suggestions to get through, so I'm sure I'll figure something out. Final thing, if you didn't see it already, I put up a merch store on Zazzle if you want to contribute. I don't expect anything, but it's always appreciated, you know? I don't do ads, I don't do donations, I don't do any of that, so this is like the one way you can contribute if you feel like contributing at all. A link for that will be down in the description. Until next time, thank you, and have a nice day.